To the Burlington School Committee meeting of October 26, 2021. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. This meeting is being held in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts, March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law of General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 20. No public attendance will be permitted in person. The public has the ability to attend and access the meeting through WebEx technology. It's also on Burlington Becc Public Access Channel. Burlington School Committee will hear public comment by virtual or remote only. Meetings are also broadcast at Burlington Cable TV Becc. For those tuning in through WebEx, the meeting number is 2336-042-8765. Password is Tuesday. And as per the policy of the Burlington School Committee, anybody who wants to participate in this meeting has the ability to do that during the appropriate time. If it's a matter that's on the agenda, we'd ask you to wait till the matter is heard on the agenda. If it's for something not on the agenda, you'll give the opportunity in public participation. All public participation is limited to 3 minutes. And having said all of that, we'll now move to our agenda. Approval of the warrant. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the warrant as submitted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 401. It's approved.
Can you move the mic closer to you?
Oops, sorry. Get the hang of this one of these days. Next item is the approval of the minutes from the October 12th meeting.
Mr. Chair, just if October 12th, we put a amended minutes at your chair, and the amendments were, I feel that they were just, some of the names needed to be updated. So I think the bulk of the minutes are the same.
Okay.
So moved.
Moved and seconded to approve the amended minutes as submitted this evening. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Did we get a second on that? If we didn't, I
You
second.
seconded it.
I didn't speak. I just did, though. Yes, okay.
Public participation. Is there anybody seeking to ask something in public participation, as long as it's not otherwise on the agenda? I'm going to defer to Mr. Kuna. He's monitoring this for us. There's somebody out there with a hand raised.
Eileen Sigler.
Eileen. Hi, Eileen.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I'm asking again if we could please post the financial statements and the related documents to the website. I believe the most recent ones are dated March. And maybe we can get a process in place so that it happens automatically after each meeting. That would be helpful.
Thank you, Eileen. I'll look at your messages. Anybody else talk about public participation?
Yep. Steve Moran.
Steve Moran. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Tom. The levels are still kind of low. It's hard to hear Dr. Conti, and also it's hard to hear you. And also, I look forward to the Safe Routes to Schools update later in the program.
Okay, we'll take a look at that, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if that's any better, but I think that's the best we can do. Anybody else for public participation?
Jean DeRosa.
Jean DeRosa.
Hi, everybody. So I work in the district and I actually grew up in Burlington. My parents still live there on Mill Street. And so I'm calling actually about the teacher contract that is up for negotiation. I'm currently a school committee member out here in the Wachusett district. So I know that your time is very precious, so I'm going to keep this very brief. And the time is also precious to all of us teachers in the district as well. So I just wanted to reiterate that the contract negotiations, I know that one of the things we are asking for is for more time. And I don't think we're asking really for the fact that we want to just shorten the school year. I think we're asking for the fact that we want time for ourselves to be able to grow. I can tell you that during the pandemic, I worked all summer long, all summer trying to make sure that I could have the curriculum accessed by every child in my classroom, no matter how I had to deliver that. So, so I think that, you know, as we're moving forward with contract negotiations, I just implore with those people that are working on that committee, that subcommittee, to please listen to what our union is asking for. And for those of you that aren't on the subcommittee, I know as a school committee member, sometimes you don't know everything that's occurring in those meetings. So if you could please just kind of talk amongst yourselves and figure out like what's happening there. It really is important for us to settle this contract. So I ask you to please work well with our union. We are really asking for things that the union has talked, you know, to everybody in the union about. And so please work on our contract. So thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Anybody else, Bob?
Nope.
Okay, seeing nobody else under public participation, we're going to move into item 5, information reports. Subcommittee reports. Anybody have anything to bring forward? Carl?
So the town-wide Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is going to meet tomorrow night at 7:30. The minutes are posted on the town website. And it's not going to be anything really long or in-depth. It's more of a swear-in of new members and elect a chair and a vice chair, a recording secretary, and then just kind of set some parameters for moving forward. But it's very exciting, and I encourage everyone to tune in if they're available.
Thank you. Chris?
Catherine and I work with the CPAC, and we have asked Beth, we covered all the topics with her, and we asked Beth to actually do the subcommittee report, if that's all right. Okay. Is Beth, are you on there?
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't hear him say it was okay, so I didn't want to talk until he said it was all right.
He nodded.
Hi.
Hi, Beth.
Thank you for your time. For those that don't know me, I'm Beth Colburn, the membership chair of the CPAC and a parent of 3 children in the district. The CPAC has been very busy this fall planning and working on a lot of things that I wanted to share with you all. First up, we have 2 upcoming events. The first one is actually tomorrow at 6:30. We have our monthly virtual caregiver chat. It's a support group style gathering for caregivers of students receiving special education services in the district. Last month, we talked about discussing labels with students, as well as who and when to tell other people about those labels. Tomorrow's chat is open to any topic. Our second event is Tuesday, November 9th from 7 to 9. We're hosting a virtual basic rights presentation. This presentation walks caregivers through special education process from evaluations to eligibility. It includes state and federal law and guidelines. It's presented by the Federation for Children with Special Needs and requires pre-registration so they can send materials needed for the presentation ahead of time. There's usually opportunity, I'm sorry, for Q&A at the end.
We lost you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, you're good.
Okay. So the basic rates presentation has a Q&A at the end. You do need to pre-register so they can send the materials ahead of time. I believe if it hasn't gone out already, it's going to be going out via Aspen. But if you're looking for information on either event, you can check our Facebook page or email us at burlingtoncpac@gmail. We've got 2 old business updates. The first one is the lack of the wind block at the middle school. Ms. Purchase reached out to say that the student council would meet and discuss the issue, and then CPAC would be looped back in regarding an ongoing evaluation process for the schedule. We have not yet heard back about that. The second item is the mask exemption policy. Ms. Ciccolini reached out with a clarification document regarding mask exemption and requested feedback. Our board members provided that requested feedback and we're pending a response. We continue to seek clear policy outlining mask exemption processes for those that medically need it, while also fully supporting mask wearing. So that's where we're at with that. The last item that I wanted to bring up is very exciting, I think, and that is communication boards in playgrounds. I'd like to make an initial request that the Burlington Public School parks include communication boards. For those that aren't aware, communication boards are groupings of visuals that assist people with conveying needs and information when they're otherwise unable to do so or need assistance in organizing their thoughts to prepare to verbalize their needs and wants. As many of you know, these boards are extensively used in the education system, early childhood environments, special needs populations, and are a valuable tool in allowing individuals with communication needs to access other people, places, and activities. Many surrounding towns have incorporated communication boards in their recreational spaces, including Medford, Ipswich, Hopkinton, many more. CPAC has begun working with the Recreation Department to begin this process as well. They have already chosen a vendor, style for boards, and are committing to install them in all future building spaces. Funding for the boards is going on currently with the Rec Commission, I believe, next month. The idea to incorporate communication boards in our parks first came from a CPAC parent of a child with special needs. She shared how her son requires a special device to communicate, but that carrying it around at parks is cumbersome and inhibitive to his participation. Having boards at all the parks would allow her son and many others to freely access parks at the same manner as other children. That said, I urge you to think about the widespread benefits of communication boards at parks for all children, as visual aids support any child developing language and social skills. Knowing that this process is already going on within the rec department, we'll likely be seeing these boards in our community parks soon. It only makes sense to begin the conversation of incorporating this bridge to accessibility and inclusion into our school parks as well. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions about that?
Anybody?
Yeah. So Beth, you and I have talked about it, and I broached this. You and I have talked about it, and I broached the subject to Dr. Conti and Mr. Cuna, and I believe they're looking into it. I think it's a fabulous idea. I have a granddaughter who uses a communication device, and I just think it's a great thing to do, and I'm sure we'll have to figure out how to pay for it and when to pay for it and when to do it. But I'm glad you brought it up, and hopefully we can move forward with that. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Beth? Martha?
I just want to say I think it's a great idea, and if we can work out the logistics and the costs, we should go ahead and do it.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you all for your time.
I just want to say I agree as well. I just wanted to speak up.
Thank you, Beth. All right. Any other subcommittee reports? Anybody? No? Moving on, Ways and Means. Are you out there, Roger? Or Steve, or anybody?
Yep, several of the subcommittee members are here tonight, but I think all the issues I have are already on the agenda.
Student representative, Brooke Hovass, are you on the call, Brooke?
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
good.
What do you got for us?
Not much has happened. The only thing is, my grade decided that we were gonna have the pep rally outside due to COVID concerns, because we didn't want the whole entire school in the gym at the same time. And they're starting Spirit Week to make up for, like, the school spirit that was lost last year. They're doing, like, Spirit Month, basically. That's about it.
Okay, anybody have any questions or comments for Brooke?
Is that the month of November, Brooke?
Yeah, we're doing like every Friday until the week that we have the 3 days, and then that week we're gonna have Spirit Week that whole week.
Thanks, Brooke. Item 6 on our agenda, learning, BECC school highlights. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we said with the agenda, we're going to try to do a transition a little bit away from logistics and pandemic and get back to some of the great programming that's happening. You heard some about the high school programs last meeting. We're joined tonight by Deb Clark, who is the director of the Burlington Early Childhood Center, the BECC. For many Burlington families, their first experience with the school district is through the BECC, and they just do such a great job creating a just phenomenal first impression. So we're sort of doing bookends. You heard from the high school. Now you're going to hear about our 3- and 4-year-old program. I think sometimes people believe that because the content is harder in high school, that the teaching is harder. And while I don't want to say which is harder or easier, what I do want to say is the teaching that goes on at the early elementary level is very complex, and we have just some talented educators there. So it's might be far more than people understand or realize. So Deb, thank you for joining us tonight, and we're excited to hear about some of the background in the BECC. The program's really only been a Burlington program for about 13 or 14 years, I think. Is that correct?
I think that's about it. Yes. Yeah. I've been there for 10 years now, but almost 10 years now. But it was 2 or 3 years before I came there that they separated from lab. Yes. So for those of you who don't know, the Burlington Early Childhood Center is the integrated preschool for the town of Burlington. So we have students with and without disabilities. We have currently 9 classrooms that are up and running. We have 2 separate classrooms, but the rest are integrated with 3s, 4s, and some of our friends are turning 5 actually right now. We're up to 100 students right now. So it's really nice to be back with morning and afternoon classes. Last year it was a little challenging where we had some students on a hybrid model, some students every day, but the kids are here every day, morning and afternoon. And it's really nice to get back into that, what preschool is. So much of what we do for our kiddos is routines. We teach them routines, we teach them schedules. We try to make sure that, we're following that. And then all of a sudden, from shutting down to last year's schedule of social distancing and kind of keeping the classrooms at a bare minimum of furniture and materials to bringing back things this year, we're kind of, changing the dynamic for a lot of our preschoolers. So, we're really just trying to get them back into what, being a preschooler is, what a preschool learner is. And it's really, I think one of the happiest things was getting all our materials back in the rooms with the furniture, with the rugs, with being able to share the toys. And I think our classroom teachers, our classroom staff, therapists, worked incredibly hard to get all those classrooms back in with the help of our custodians, bringing all the furniture up from storage and everything. So if you looked at our classrooms last year, they looked pretty barren, but this year they look like great preschool classrooms where you see a lot of sharing, you see a lot of integrated play, dramatic play. And again, Dr. Conti spoke, it's a different level of teaching at the preschool than at the high school. Some people say, oh, they're just playing, but playing is really how kids learn. And, you know, if you think about how we interact and how we negotiate, how we say yes or no, how we request, how we tolerate delays in getting something that we need. That's what, you know, our talented staff are doing on a daily basis. So one of the things too, we're happy to have back we have a social worker that we share with Frances Wyman, and last year it was mostly remote lessons, and this year she's getting back into our classrooms doing a lot of the social emotional teaching, which is wonderful. I think, you know, all schools are seeing the need for that social emotional teaching. So she's doing lessons on emotions and how are we feeling and those types of things. So it's great to have Kate back with us on that. Um, and the other thing to think of too was, you know, some of our students, they are 3 and 4, turning 5. A lot of them have been in a pandemic for more than half their lives. So it's a new reality for them coming to school. Some of our kids were remote last year. So um, it's just really nice to have them back in and navigating the classrooms again. Um, and I think I do actually, while I have your attention, I really do want to give a shout out to our nursing department because we wouldn't have been able to manage any of this with our nurses. You know, in addition to Jess Guerin, our nurse, and Barbara Conley, our nurse leader, it's just, you know, you have your sick calls during the day at the preschool level. Sometimes it's just a Band-Aid. Sometimes it's just they need to take a walk. So you're dealing with those visits. You're dealing with COVID concerns, COVID symptoms, and we have first-time families with us. So we want to give a big shout out to her as well. And so for those of you also who don't know, what we do is for our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, we get referrals from early intervention. So that's a program that services children 0 to 3 years old who may have some developmental delays or need some services. So Andrea Hayes, our team chairperson, she's very talented, does a great job of transitioning those families into our program. And I think right now we're at 42 referrals so far for the school year, and it's October, so she's very, very busy, as is our evaluation team. But and we are averaging about 2 to 3 referrals a week right now. So hopefully that slows down just a little bit, but that's what we're working on right now, and it's been very busy. But we're happy to be back, and the kids are really happy to be back, and our families, you know, we have very supportive families who are wonderful. So it's been great to have them and have all their support.
Mr. Chair, Deb, that was great. When a child turns 3, they don't have access to your program until they turn 3. Is that correct?
So once a child turns 3, they do have access to the public preschool, and that's in any city or town for that. So we have students, like I said, we have neighborhood students who pay tuition, and then we have students who qualify for special education. And that is what, you know, that's why we exist, and we have those programs. And so a student turns 3, we do an evaluation. We see if they qualify for any special education programming. And if they do, the team writes an IEP, and they are placed in either a morning or an afternoon program. And we do have, this year we do have 2 separate programs for students who need more intensive instruction.
Pandemic, I know there was time built into the preschool schedule that allowed for home visits. Is that a part also, a tool that you have available?
Actually, early intervention just started going back into the homes. They were remote until I think the beginning of September. So we're actually able to go out now and do home visits, transition planning conferences. And we are also able to, we're starting to do some observations in some area preschools where preschools have reached out or parents have reached out. So it is really nice to be able to get back out there and see kids, not on the screen, but in person.
And Deb, I'm sorry to pepper you. But if you are maxed out in your space, how many students does it take for you to be at capacity?
I'm sorry, there was some background noise. Can you repeat that, Dr. Conti?
How many students does it take for you to get capacity in the space that you currently occupy?
We can have up to 15 students per classroom. So you're gonna have me do math here. So we're not at capacity yet. We are at capacity right now for our neighborhood students. We have room for our any student who would be special if they qualify for that. And I would say right now we're probably at 40 to 50% capacity for special education students.
I guess my longer here is there's lots of conversation about universal high-quality preschool. If that were to...
So we would need a bigger space, Dr. Conti, a much bigger space for that. We do have space now. We've rearranged some rooms. We do have one classroom right now without windows. And we've shifted people around. So we're making do, but there's definitely, we could use more space. And if universal preschool does come into play, I think that opens the door for many, many more students. And we certainly wouldn't have the room for that if that were to start tomorrow.
So I know the committee involved with the Fox Hill project. It may be something, maybe not as part of the building, but as a wing of the building or something like that, if that's going to be something that pushes us in that direction. Because we couldn't handle, in the space that we have at the high school, we couldn't handle really more than what we are providing currently.
I'm sorry, I'm getting like some feedback and.
No, Deb, I was telling the committee that when they are considering and doing some of the Fox Hill work for the new Fox Hill school, if universal preschool becomes a reality, we may need to incorporate some early childhood space, a wing, facility as part of that project if we were to have to provide a universal high-quality preschool experience, I guess is what I'm saying, because you're sort of maxed out in the space that you currently have.
That would be accurate.
So I think that would be it. The other sort of technical aspects of this, maybe for the new members, is the preschool is paid for out of the accommodated account. So it's not an operating budget program, it's out of the accommodated account. The neighborhood students do pay a tuition, and we get asked every year what happens with that tuition. Again, that is it's because it's paid out of a town account, the tuition dollars go back to the town. So I think that's technically sort of how that mechanism works. And many people don't realize that we are obligated to provide programming for our children with disabilities really from the age when they turn 3, for many of them through the age of 22. So we again, Deb's programming and her teachers are the first step in that journey for many families. So again, Deb, I know there's a lot going on. I know that the pandemic has been extremely difficult. I think the quality of programming, you've maintained the quality of programming, which is a tribute to your staff and certainly to your leadership. And you mentioned Jess in the nurse's office, and again, has been outstanding. So thank you. And I'll ask the committee if they have any other questions, or Tom will. Mr. Murphy will.
Any comments or questions from Ms. Clark? Christine?
Deb, I just want to tell you, which you already know, that you have a wonderful, wonderful program. And I applaud you for it and for doing such a good job with it.
Thank you, Mrs. Monaco. It's a great staff that we have that are here every day and are so dedicated. So it falls to all of them. They just do a wonderful job, and it's easy to look good when you have such a talented staff.
Agreed.
Deb, thanks for coming over tonight. Thanks for the information. I concur with Christine's remarks that you have a great program up there. It's hard to believe it's been 13 years already, but it was a fortuitous move back then because it's worked out very well for the town and for the students. So, thank you very much.
Deb has a few pictures that I would like to present.
We got some pictures, Deb. That
and I can't figure out how to present them on WebEx, so I guess I need like an IT lesson on that. But Bob said he could present them. There's just about 10 pictures, just so you guys can see, what our preschoolers look like, and them enjoying some time inside and outside. So, can you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So these are our playgrounds. Just being able to get outside. the kids are just enjoying themselves outside. Inside, they're able to get a little bit closer and do some interactive projects together, which is nice. It is fun to see the kids go from inside with the masks to outside and seeing the smiles. They really did get a kick out of seeing everybody smile and laugh. That's really been nice to see this year. We're doing some yoga. A lot of our classes are doing some yoga for relaxation and movement breaks, which is wonderful. One of our classes is learning about nocturnal animals, so they came down to show us their raccoons that they made out of paper bags. And just getting together and swinging on the swings. Like I said, if you're ever having, a tough day, you can just walk into one of the classrooms and just hear the laughter and see them enjoying themselves, and it turns into a pretty good day.
The last picture.
Thanks for showing those, Bob. So, yep. So those are some of our preschoolers, and we're going to keep at it, and we enjoy having them, and it's going to be a great year.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing that pictures. You're going to teach us all the yoga next? We all get to do that before we leave?
Come on down, and we'll do a lesson for you. The kids will lead it.
All righty. Moving on, under item 7, equity. Financial aid policy, second reading. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is on the agenda for a second reading. The draft policy has been shared with Ways and Means and added to the Burlington Public Schools website as a draft. I know that my staff has reviewed it with Nicole as well. So recommended school committee approve the financial aid policy, and then I'm assuming once we begin implementation, if there are any issues, we can certainly come back to the school committee to make many adjustments. But I think this will help us provide more access to families for anything that we need to.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to get it on the table for discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the student financial assistance policy as presented. Are there any questions or comments? I had one question, Dr. Conti. It might have been answered before, and I just went past me. But are we going to have a line item in our budget for this going forward? I don't know what type of a financial impact we anticipate here, but I was just curious as to how it was going to be paid for.
I'm not exactly sure yet. We'll identify a source. Maybe something that comes out of school choice. I think Nicole was looking at some options, but I do think we should probably have a pool of money that's identified, and a process. Obviously, the policy sort of outlines a process to get to it, so I think that would be a transparent way to go. I think Nicole would probably be better to answer that than me.
Sure, through the chair.
Oh, hi, Nicole.
Hi.
The voice from above.
So basically the policy says that if it is like related to curriculum, that like we'd be able to support it. As I think everyone knows, in Burlington we don't charge fees for much of anything, so I think it would be actually very limited in terms of impact to operating budget. I think like really the only things would be AP exams, which I think are $96 per exam, in some of like the field trips that happen during the course of the school day. But we have some entitlement grants that would be able to cover AP exams, and we also have the school picture money that would be able to help for the field trips. So I think in terms of things that are curriculum related, we wouldn't really need much, if any, support from operating at all. For like the other voluntary trips, such as I think the band does like an optional like trip outside of school to New York City. So like this policy would allow for like the same qualifications and determination status to apply to all students. But the funding source would need to come from like an outside source like boosters or a PTO or like another maybe like a corporate donation or some other source that would be secured by whoever is like overseeing, maybe like an advisor, whoever is overseeing those trips.
Good, thank you, Nicole.
This is a really good idea. I think it's a good piece to ensure that all of our students have access to all the educational opportunities. And I, am not surprised that Nicole and Dr. Conti have figured out that there are ways to fund it. And I'm glad to hear it wouldn't be a large thing for the operating budget, but I do think it's important. So I'm in support of this.
Okay, any other questions or comments regarding this policy? Seeing none, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, 500. Item B, update on the English Language Parent Advisory Council. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The LPAC, the LPAC, similar to the CPAC, is a new parent council for parents of English learners. It's really open to anybody, but the focus is on our English learning population. And our director of English learning is Carrie Lamprey. And I know this evening that she is actually teaching an adult EL course to some of our adult parents. So she's not available, but I think Mr. Porch, Ray, is available, and I know he participated in that evening. And so I was going to ask Ray to just give a brief update to the committee.
Sure.
On our first LPAC meeting. Ray?
Dr. Conti is here.
Oh, Carrie, sorry.
We just finished class, actually. We just got out.
All right, well, thank you so much for, first of all, the adult parent class, so thank you. And again, Carrie Lamprey is our director of English language learners, and she put lots of effort into the creating and supporting the LPAC. So Carrie, if you want to talk about the evening a little bit and maybe what the plans are moving forward.
Sure. And sorry, Ray, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sure you would have a lot to be able to say. So, and thank you so much for being there. And Dr. Conti, we had Mr. Larkin there. Miss Dressler was with us as well. So we had some great, showing from our administrators. Miss Jennifer Knight worked with me to do a lot of planning around this, as well as Miss Rosemary D'Souza. So it was really a team effort in putting this together. This is something that is not only important for us here to be able to have the voices of our families represented. Their role is very similar to our CPAC in the district to be able to provide guidance and support to our leadership team, including our school committee, as well around matters that are important to our English learner programming. So we are not only, this is not only important to us, but it's also required by law. So any district that has more than 100 English learners is required to have an LPAC. So this year, we were able to get it started with inviting our families of our English learner students and our former English learner students. So we send out invitations to all our families, and we are starting with a small group and building from there, like many of our other neighboring districts. But we had a great showing from our families and invited interpreters. So we had interpreters for about 5 different languages that were requested by our families. And so we had sort of groupings by language so that there could be that support. We also provided childcare and some food for our families when they came. And most importantly, we were able to start the conversation about, for our families, what's working in our district, you know, what changes they've seen in their children, what are some things that are different for them in here versus in their home countries. And so we're just trying to learn more about our families first and foremost, and where they're coming from and some of the experiences they're bringing. So that's really where we started the meeting off. And our plans are really to gradually build leadership within that group. So we want to sort of gradually release the responsibility of planning for the meetings as we go through the year, and identify parents who would be interested in stepping up to that role. We actually did have a few parents afterwards say that they were interested in doing more, so that's exciting. And we'd also, at the same respect, would love to invite more folks from our district to be able to come in and share and address some of the concerns and some of the topics that parents bring up. For example, you know, we are planning to have Mr. Sean Musselman, who is now leading our work around social studies for the district. He's doing a lot of work around curriculum development and thinking about cultures and diversity. And so he's going to be joining us for our next meeting in November to really reach out to our families as our, you know, as resources in thinking about our curriculum and what that can look like in our district and how we can be, you know, authentic in bringing cultures into our curriculum. So that's one of our items for the future. Another piece that came up is parents talked about how just the expectation of reading aloud to their children might look a little different where they came from in their home countries. So Miss Renee Sacco has also offered to join us in January to share a little bit about reading aloud to children and give us an example of what that might look like, and again get feedback from families about what works for them, and making sure that we're just really addressing the needs and concerns of this specific population. I'm happy to answer any questions. That's just a little overview of where we were and then where we're headed. And please, Ray is here, I know, and might be able to share a little more, as well as I think Jennifer is here as well, Jennifer Knight, and she was part of this process as well.
Thank you, Carrie. Do you have any comments? Martha?
I'm really delighted that we're getting these kind of programs going, that the LPAC has gotten started. It sounds like you've got a really good plan and have really engaged with the parents already with the first meeting, so that's really wonderful. And I'm also really thrilled that our district is offering adult English language learning, and I want to thank you for whoever it is, if it's you, Carrie, or other people who made that happen. And I'm really curious, and it's Carrie, I just heard. And I'm curious how many adults you have in the class right now for this session.
So actually we are, last spring, we actually started the adult ESL classes online, and we initially had about 80 parents sign up that they were interested. So we were at first a little taken aback. We weren't expecting that many to be interested. We ended up with 4 different classes of about 15 students in each class. So we had quite a large turnout. And then we offered a mini session in the summer online as well. And then right now, currently, we have 2 classes. We did reach out to our sort of core group of families and had a few join us as well online. We now have about 30 to 35 students in our 2 groups. So there's another teacher, Miss Maylee Castro, who is also an ESL teacher at Pine Glen now. She started as our adult ESL teacher and then joined us as well now for our Pine Glen ESL teacher. So she was doing that in the spring, summer, and then we also had another teacher who was not able to join us or stay with us for the fall. So I'm filling in for that piece. So between the 2 classes, we have about 30 parents, and we also now have an in-person group that just started on Monday night because we were aware that our audience for the online classes really consisted of families who were very familiar with technology. And that limited our participation because we do have families who are less familiar or don't have the technology available to them. So we wanted to offer a couple of options, and we have a group right now. The first meeting was about 10, but we had 25 sign up, and we anticipate getting a few more families, probably about 5 to 10 more families join us in person, and it's at Francis Wyman on Monday nights.
Well, thank you. It sounds great. I'm really glad that we're doing that. And thank you for doing it, getting it
No
going.
problem. You're welcome. It's fun. It's great to get to connect with families in that way.
Anybody else? Dr. Conti?
Again, Mr. Murphy, just a couple comments that our EL population is growing, but it's also changing. So I think we have a population of newcomer students who are here as well, and I think Carrie works really hard with that population. We're talking about 50 or so, Carrie, at the high school alone, and they're coming in to Burlington, and they really need some of our support. So we talked about navigating the Massachusetts just sort of system in regards to Mass Health. I think we're getting to the point where may need some support in regards to some Spanish-speaking staff, especially social workers. And one of the frustrations is we have some students missing school because they'll need something like a COVID test. And right now we have to try to get them to Lynn, Massachusetts, where there's a free clinic. I'm assuming there might be one in Lowell. Mr. Foss, I'm looking at you, but I'm just saying because you work there and you may know that. But there's no real local place for these students. We have been working with some of our partners in terms of the urgent care, and they've been fantastic. We need to formalize that. But I know that Carrie, Ms. Lamprey, and some of the high school counseling staff have actually been driving students to Lynn to get them tested so they can come back and make sure that they can be in school. So this is a growing population in Burlington. I think it's a relatively new population in Burlington, and it's going to require some resources to provide access to these students. I can't tell you exactly what that is now, but we're having those conversations, and it should really be, I think, more of a community conversation. And so I know, Mr. Foss, you mentioned you have this meeting and you're not going to do a whole lot tomorrow night, but I think at a future meeting it might be a good topic that's worth speaking to the community about, because we have to support these families that are coming in. So, and again, the school is just doing everything that they can, and again, Ms. Lamprey is teaching parents, and again, our high school counseling staff, our high school teachers are really trying to do the best they can with this newcomer population. So, Carrie, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Can I ask Eric a question?
So, good.
Eric, so why do these kids need tests that we can't do in the school?
Sometimes there's a consent issue. We really can't test students without consent. So I think there's just some issues navigating sort of who's doing the test and whether they need actually a PCR test versus a rapid. So I don't know all the details, but I think if it's possible to test them in school, we will. But I think getting folks onto Mass Health and sort of navigating some of that has been a challenge for our staff, and I think we need to rethink our support of these students. And we don't technically have a newcomer program, but I think we're going to have to develop more of a newcomer program if we continue to see the numbers that we're seeing.
Thanks.
Yes, along those lines, I know many other school districts have whole departments that help work with students who are newcomers. with health issues, with services in the community. I know, I'm really pleased. I know that's part of what Jennifer Knight's position is making those connections. Ms. Lamprey is doing some of that with her department, and obviously you're thinking about it. So I want to encourage you. I know that it's a lot, and it may be additional resources that we need to put into it, but I think it's really important because Burlington is changing, and there are students who may need these things that we maybe didn't need in the past. So thank you for moving forward with that.
Okay, seeing nothing further, move on to item C. Let's talk about it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Many of you participated in the Let's Talk About It, the community conversation, and I think it generated a lot of attendance and a lot of curiosity, so much that my father attended, which I think that he wanted to cheer on Mr. Porch. So I know Ray's with us tonight to go over it, but I have to say, if Ray got my father to participate, then that's saying a lot. So, Ray, are you with us this evening?
Yeah, I am. In full transparency, I had a chance to meet that spry young gentleman some time back, so I don't know if I have as much to do with it as he's just super curious and wonderful, wonderful guy. So I'm glad he was able to make it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had one of the big highlights, I think, for me, was that we had a team approach. I think Carrie just spoke to like what we're trying to do as a team of leadership in this district, and I think we take a lot of our collaborative kind of lead from Dr. C. He'll shun away the credit, but like this is a big part of the why we're moving in this unity. And so I think Christina Ciccolini, Carrie Lamprey, and Jen Knight did a fantastic job really, pulling in one direction to make sure that we are modeling what it is to be collaborative, and that's a big part of being an inclusive school district. Is that not we don't just talk about it, but we model it, and that's important to us. And we want to invite folks in and do that in a very transparent way. We want to tackle difficult issues and do it in a community, because we are a community, this school district. And I think that event with about 100 people attending did show the importance that this has to the Burlington community as a whole. I wanted to formally thank you folks for showing up and being present, and more importantly, engaging in the process that is a conversation. So thank you to the school committee members for stepping into the space that way, yourselves as learners. And I hope that moving forward that you will continue to do that. The other thing that I wanted to highlight was, for feedback purposes, we did have folks do feedback. And one of the things that stands out for me is 96% of the people who did complete the feedback said that they had something positive that they learned and took away. And while the session was really introductory and very surface level for a first session, I felt like people were engaged, and it was really nice to read that folks felt like they got something from the process of that first session. The other thing in the feedback that showed, bright spots is that folks are very hopeful. I think a lot of what we'll learn here as we go along in this work is that when folks are, concerned about things, being able to come into a space and talk about your concerns are equally as important as it is to kind of highlight the things that you feel good about. And I feel like that feedback lends itself to, for me to believe that folks will be willing to do that. And that's important for us. A lot of what I've seen in my short time in Burlington has been very positive. And I think the engagement level is very high in terms of this work. And so I'm inspired, by the first session, and as I said, very hopeful, that folks stay committed to showing up and bringing their voices and bringing their hopes and their concerns, and we'll dig into some more substance as we go along here. And those dates will be coming out here by the end of the week. We'll get those out. We're trying to work around, the LPAC dates so that folks are able to be present. Again, we're trying to work as a team and make sure that we pace this work in a way that we can have the highest level of engagement possible. Because that's where you get the best ideas, when people show up together and talk about the work and sharing the experience, talk about the challenges and bring their unique perspectives to the table. And so that's a big part of the why we did this. We had some success. I had some success in Boston with this as well. And community engagement's hard. And when we talk about collaboration, it sounds good, like, oh, let's collaborate, but you get in a space where you got to talk with people, and they may have differing perspectives. How do we do that respectfully? How do we seek understanding, and not always having agreement? And so that's important. And I think that tackling a difficult topic makes it even more challenging. But I'm very hopeful. I like where we are in this work at this point. And I think that, we've got a lot of promise for this district and for our students. We got started with reaching out at the high school level for the DEI Student Advisory Committee. So we're going to get that off the ground here soon, more to come from that. But we're hopeful, and we're very excited. So, if you have questions or concerns, feel free to ask them.
Thanks, Ray. Questions or comments from Mr. Porch? I had one comment, actually.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I enjoyed the evening. I thought it was very well done, but I especially like the video, Just One Story. I've shared that with a whole bunch of people since then. It was in a very simple way, she got her point across very well. And it was, it was literally a perspective that had never even occurred to me before. So.
Yes, I thank you for sharing that feedback. That's terrific, and I'm glad that it was impactful for you, sir. It's also one of Dr. Conti's favorite videos as well, and one of mine. And so I agree with you. I think sometimes just kind of being aware of that is a game changer for us all. So I'm glad that it was impactful for you as well.
Great. If that's any indication, I'm looking forward to it. So.
Terrific.
Martha.
Yes, I also am delighted that we had so many people who attended, and I thought it was very well done. And since we discussed, for people who were not able to attend, the video that Mr. Murphy just referenced is called The Dangers of a Single Story. You just type in Danger of a Single Story, and you can watch it too. It's only about 15 minutes long, and it is really a valuable one. So thank you for putting all that together, Ray.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ray. Anything else, Dr.
Thank you. Good to see everybody.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, we'll be getting out the dates for the future meetings and moving forward. And again, still under the equity topic, as the LPAC, I want to give it a chance to get going. But I think as we've discussed over the years, from a regulatory perspective, EL is sort of evolving in the same way that special education evolved over time. So I'm assuming at some point we'll discuss the LPAC, because it is a regulatory requirement, having it be a subcommittee, and then we can talk about that with the school committee moving forward. Again, it might be a little early to do that, but as the LPAC gets established, I think it's going to parallel some of what we've seen with the CPAC.
All right. Item 8, culture, relationship thriving. Test and stay update, Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Larkin is on, or if not, I'm going to have to do something.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, thank God.
He didn't want to have to do something.
So again, Patrick can talk a little bit about the company that we're working with. We don't have a whole lot of update. The commissioner, though, did announce today that he's going to be extending the mask requirement through January 15th.
Really?
So I know that we've said we need to look at it every month. I think he wanted to extend it through the holidays. So January 15th is sort of the state date at this point. So we probably don't need to have that conversation prior to November. So that's there. So Patrick, the Test and Stay program and some of what we've seen with the new company, or that we've talked about.
Yeah, thank you. We feel like we're getting closer to a reliable test and stay process. We have, as of today, we have a contracted person in 5 of our 6 schools. The only one we don't have is Marshall Simons right now, but we're hoping that if we had an issue at Marshall Simons, which we haven't had an occasion to do test and stay at Marshall Simons, that we would be able to send the person from Memorial over there to support that. So we have 5 of those 6, so we're hoping that will lead to more stability. We still have had a couple of issues with people late or sick on a given day, and we've had to scramble. So our discussion right now is just about Plan B on those type of days. We are continuing to get people trained up from BPS who can jump in the case of an emergency where a tester doesn't show up, because the last thing we want to do is send kids home. Our number one objective is to keep kids in school. So that's our slogan. So we continue to work through what can we do to keep kids in school. Trying to think of what else, Dr. Conti. I know we continue to have limited cases around the elementary schools. And again, everybody that signed up for test and stay at this point has been able to stay in school. We've had no cases where we've had a student who's in test and stay test positive. So that is the good news. And it's just about ironing out the bumps. Again, as we continue to get on board these new contracted people into the district, and want to continue to thank the nurses for their support with this and helping out in the process. I know how busy they are, and they've been giving us great feedback for some of the bumps that they're seeing. They're obviously on the ground in their schools on a day-to-day basis, so they're able to give us the feedback into how it's going. Even though they may not have done much testing at this point, they have observed some and given some valuable feedback on how we can continue to improve our test and stay.
Thank you. We're really beginning to wrap up the first quarter of the school year and starting our second quarter. I think we've managed the first quarter in regards to COVID cases well with the mitigation factors. I think we're going to start to move towards a more typical school day coming into second quarter. So we've discussed opening up our cafeterias again in early November. Some of our instructional strategies are going to start to elementary instruction especially is all about small group instruction. So we're going to start to see more small group instruction moving forward, all the while, again, keeping masks on and making sure that the airflow is there, and then having a strong test and stay program to make sure kids are able to stay in school. We are hearing that, I think there was just an approval today for 5 to 12. So I think we'll be supporting that process. Again, parents will need to work with their pediatricians to figure that out, but I think we also had a call with Susan Luminello today. The community is seeing very low numbers, very low spread. So we're going to, again, in the second quarter, really start moving back towards what would be more of a typical school experience. And I'm hoping if we can get through the winter flu season, that springtime comes, that sort of after January, we'll start to see some schools that aren't wearing masks anymore, and we can start to move forward. So I think that's kind of the timeline that we were working with today. And again, I want to underpromise on that because, again, it's really going to depend how things go. But I think the commissioner was wise just to extend this through the January 15th, I think, just to make that decision ahead of all of the holiday travel that is going to happen moving forward. We did get positive feedback. We had a school day flu and COVID clinic at Fox Hill yesterday, and or no, I think it was today actually. And so I think teachers appreciated the ability to get a flu shot or a booster right at the workplace during their school day. So I think we're trying to make it as convenient as we can. So,
Chris.
I don't know if you plan to talk about this now or later, but in conversations with parents, I have two questions, parents and staff both, about the cafeterias, opening them, and also about our school committee meetings, having the public. I don't know if you want to do it at a different time on the agenda, but I have those two questions I want to be addressed tonight, is going to in-person meetings and also cafeterias being opened.
Ms. Monica, we have school lunch later in the agenda, so we can
That's
certainly talk
fine.
about it there. But I think if you want to talk about the school committee meetings as a committee, we can certainly do that at any time.
Well, it's up to the Jim.
Why don't we do it now?
Go ahead.
I've just been asked by several people to bring it up because I understand that we are the only board that is still having WebEx meetings for our public participation. So frankly, I thought parents would like being able to stay home and log into a meeting. But if they'd rather come to the meeting in person, I don't have any problem with that. Especially, there's a mask mandate, of course, and, there are rules that have to be followed, social distancing, et cetera. But I'd just like to throw it out to the committee.
Yeah, I'd like to see people come in person too. I think you connect better when you're in person than trying to stare at a screen and don't have faces to put to names necessarily. Just be nice to be in person again.
I know one of the issues when we started was school buildings had a little bit different rules than the town hall.
Masks, yeah.
Masks and things of that nature. So I think that's why there was a little bit of a divergence between how meetings here were handled, how meetings in town hall were handled. But that doesn't mean we can't modify that. But I think that was the reason initially.
Yeah.
Carol?
I remember, I don't know exactly when because sometimes it's a blur, but there were parents that were on WebEx who were encouraging us to keep the ability to sign in virtually, just for this reason that Ms. Monaco had mentioned, that it's convenient for parents who might not be able to attend in person. Is it possible for us to continue with the WebEx and allow people in person? I think that might be, allow those who want to come and sit in the chairs and view us live, and accommodate those who can't do that but still want to participate. Is that something we could do? I don't know.
I think other boards are doing that. I don't know. I know the governor's extended the remote meetings, I think, through next year sometime. So I think legally it can be done. My one concern, I think, would be from a logistics standpoint. Bob's trying to handle this for us the way that we've been doing it for the last year now. If we also have a room full of people, I don't know whether from a logistical standpoint that will create a problem in terms of trying to get everybody involved, but if that's a hurdle that can be dealt with, then I think most other boards are, they're at least, they're continuing to have it on through WebEx. Whether they're taking public input through WebEx, that I'm not sure of, but so to me, it's more of a logistical question. If we can do it, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. Martha?
Yeah, I'm not against having public invited to come in person, but I have two, logistical questions. One is, if we're going to keep social distancing, will there be a maximum number of people who we will allow? And if we say that there's room for 22 people, I just went and counted the chairs, with people sitting not next to each other, and you're the 23rd person, is that going to be satisfactory for the public, for one? And then also, I'd like to get your input, Bob, because you're the one who's managing all of the technology. And so, I do think there's a lot of people who prefer to participate by WebEx because they don't have to go out, especially on a rainy night like this. So I'd like to have it, to keep the good things about the virtual meetings that we've had, but also allow people to come. And so I guess I'd like Mr. Keener to give us a little input on whether he feels that doing both would be possible. And my other question is sort of, would we set a limit on how many people in the room?
I would just comment through the chair, of course, that it's possible. I will admit that we're lacking in the audio and video capability. So BCAT would definitely do a better job filming us with the multiple cameras and picking up the microphones. As you see right here, we have a stationary camera, but we do have microphones. So if we were to take advantage of having somebody sit at a location that was on the stationary camera, not much would have to change. If we wanted to zoom in and out and get people closer into the video feed, then we would really just need an extra person to help us with the camera moving. But again, logistically, it wouldn't be a big deal. The other question you asked and regarding the counts, I mean, technically, yes, in the school department, there would be a math calculator that we would use to figure out the square footage and how many people could or should be in that, with the social distancing that we recommend. But I don't know the answer as to what that 23rd person, where we would make them stand or send them home.
Okay.
I think that's a legitimate point, though, Martha. Whatever that number may be. And frankly, from a realistic standpoint, on a typical pre-COVID night, we might have 5 or 6 people here, depending on the issue of the day. So it's not as though we typically have 30 people, 40 people who want to attend a school committee meeting. But from time to time, there is something that catches everybody's attention. And I'm not sure that I would like to be having to stand at the door saying, you come on in, you stay out. And that's something we should think about.
I'm hoping, we haven't had a lot of participation in the years I've been on the school committee, in terms of attendees. And, it's been nice that people have been able to participate and observe the meeting and get their information firsthand. So I don't know if that many people would come in person, but.
Well, maybe we can put this as an agenda item for our next meeting, Dr. Conti, and everybody can kind of mull it over, talk to people, get some ideas, get some concerns. I think it's something that's obviously going to happen at some point, but it's a balancing act of when's the right time to start it. So, Bob?
I actually just got a text message saying that the audio is tough to hear. I think what does happen is that when we're all talking directly into the microphone, that's where we get the loud audio. As soon as we kind of turn our face, you can hear that volume drops, and that's when the home participants don't hear as much.
Okay.
So that's one of the logistics that we would run into, moving forward, whether we're in person or out of person, but if we continue with the WebEx. Okay. And not just WebEx, any type of online platform.
Tom?
Yes.
Bob, do you think you could talk to someone at maybe Town Hall to find out how they're managing to do both? Because it does seem like an added burden to do both, although certainly as an individual, I would rather log into a meeting if I wasn't on the board. If I was a participant or an audience member, I'd rather log in than traipse to the meeting. But I don't, I understand the whole camera setup is very different now from what it was when our meetings were just live meetings. And if you watch on BCAT, the angle's totally different, and there's no zooming in and all of that, or not much of it. So I think if we could get some details, I do think we need to get going on it. We need to start getting these meetings open, because we are the board that's lagging. And I don't, again, I'd be interested in how the other boards are handling it. There's no town mask mandate, whereas there is a school mask mandate. So I don't know what they're doing. Are they spacing people out? Are they just saying, okay, come in, fill the room up? If you sit next to somebody with COVID, it's your problem? I mean, I don't know what they're doing.
I can tell you the seatings, as it always has been. I've been to a couple of planning board meetings and Board of Health meetings, and it looks just like it always has, and there were no visible restrictions on, in the meetings I've been to, there've been, a half dozen people, so it's not an issue, so. But there was no apparent reduction in the number of chairs or spacing the chairs that I could tell.
Okay, would it be reasonable to ask for a plan for the next agenda on how we might do it? Eric says no.
No, again, we can put it together. I think having people back would be a good thing, but
Yeah.
we'll have to make sure that we list the mitigation restrictions on the agenda, so people are aware of them ahead of time. So a mask would be required, and we would encourage distancing. We would move some of the chairs out, and that's what we would, that's what we would have.
Could we encourage people that aren't vaccinated to participate by WebEx if we have both?
We
I
can
know.
encourage whatever we want, but
Yeah.
that's what, we wouldn't be able to ask people that
Oh, of
question,
course not.
so.
No, I get that. I'm just
So-
suggesting that it might be a polite thing to do.
Also, I was gonna say, if I recall, the setup in the room was different too. You had the table there and, so we'd have to kind of think about that logistically as well.
If I could just comment on Ms. Monaco's question. I've attended, and I also helped with some input into the beginning of getting the town hall set up into that audio and video. So they acquired more equipment. So they have a video tracking system. So you had asked about the setup, Mrs. Bond. Similar to the way that we have the room set up now, we used to have the desk in front where an attendee would come up to the desk. They have moved their desk next to in line where the, let's say the select board would be. So now, again, that camera angle is less than what it would be having to turn 180 degrees. The camera that they have is video and voice tracking, so it pans the room to whoever's speaking. Obviously, there's some adjustment, there's some lag, but it's a little bit higher tech. And there's also 3 microphones that are attached to that. So that is something that we could look at. So they chose that particular hardware as opposed to having one person or 2 people manually moving cameras. Again, so there are different options, but the biggest thing, of course, was the microphones, which again, we have here at the tables, and then the video feed, and just the layout of the room to make it as least changes as possible for the video panning. So, but yes, we could definitely put something in place for future meetings to make sure that we could accommodate.
Martha?
I also I think it's a good idea for us to talk about it at our November meeting, and I just wanted to introduce the concept of maybe waiting, if we decide to do it, and when we decide to consider doing it after the holidays are over. So it might not start until January, or 2 weeks after January 1st when people are done traveling. So just another issue as we think about it before our next discussion. I wanted to put that idea in.
Sure. Bob, we have somebody remotely.
Yes, Mr. Rosa.
Yes, as I earlier, I'm with the school committee in Wachusett Regional, and we are open to the public to have them come in and speak. We are, as a school committee, fully masked because we are in a school setting. We are in a public school library. But we haven't found any issue with having the public there. It seems to be fine. You know, we're all separated pretty much by 6 feet. So I really don't see any issue with making the meeting public. It also gives people, you know, the opportunity to be able to speak in public. Like, for example, tonight I really wanted to be able to speak to you in public so you could see me. So it really is helpful. And as Bob had said, we do have cameras that, you know, circulate around the room, and whoever's speaking, it does zoom in. As far as sound quality goes, it really does help to pull the microphone really up close to your face and right next to your mouth so that it does come out better audio wise. So I just thought I would help you guys out in that way. That's what I've seen out in Wachusett.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I
All
have a
right.
question, just one quick question.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, okay, my question is really for Martha. Are you suggesting we not start until after the first of the year?
Well, yes, a part of me thinks we should start sooner, and part of me thinks if we're going to do it, we should maybe just wait till the holidays are over. So I'm not committed to that, but I wanted people to think about that as another issue for us to figure out.
Okay. All right, moving on. Item 9, facilities finance. Bob, update on the high school, if any.
I do have an update this time.
Okay.
I have received the first draft of the Burlington High School feasibility study. Again, this is the draft form. I have received it 3 days ago, and it's 104 pages. So I've begun to review it. I can't give you a full report exactly, but I can give you the summary of everything we expected, meaning that they are reviewing the existing HVAC systems. They are recommending some potential upgrades or replacements. And there's a big focus, of course, on the accessibility that may be triggered by the 30-30 rule. A refresh on that is if you change, upgrade, or repair 30% of a building or 30% of the assessed value of the building, the whole building must be brought up to the current codes. So again, that's something that we think that we are in that zone when it comes to an HVAC replacement system of a building this size. We do believe that we will be close to, if not over, the 30% triggering rule, which would make us bring the whole building up to compliance.
Bob, can you give the school committee just the example that we discussed and how it can get expensive really quickly? The elevators aren't the right dimensions. The original elevators aren't the right dimensions.
Correct. 3 of the elevators, as Dr. Conti mentioned in this draft report, are not up to today's code. So they need to be 68 inches by 68 inches interior dimensions, and 3 of our existing elevators are not. So just as a simple measure with nothing else, those would have to be reconstructed. And again, as you can imagine, reconstruction means that they're interior to the building. Maybe we would have to knock walls down, maybe we would have to impede on the outside of it. That's one way to go left to right, but we also have to go front to back. So that means we need to make up that room somewhere. So that means maybe relocating stairways, relocating, where the elevators are. Again, that's not in the full report because that's a whole separate part of the concept. But they're really just identifying areas that would not be in compliance if we were to hit that 30-30 trigger rule.
Who makes the determination as to reaching the 30-30 rule? I mean, is that, it's 30% of the assessed value?
It technically would be the building inspector.
Okay, so he'd put a dollar value on this building, and if all of our work exceeded 30% of that, then that would be the trigger point?
There's already an assessed value on the building currently, and then when we apply for permits, which the building construction would require us to do so, the value would be assessed then on the amount of work done. And, you know, again, depending on how close we were, I don't know, again, if we have any wiggle room in that, you know, if you're 28% versus 32%. But again, I think we're that close that it's an actual concern for us, that it's something that we need to really consider.
Okay.
Bob, just what's the assessed value, roughly?
For 50 million. So
give you some ideas.
So 16, 17 million puts us right there.
And, you know, not to get too into the weeds about it right now, but, I mean, 50 million in whose opinion, and when was that made? And under today's values, maybe it's 70 million, you know, whatever. It's kind of an amorphous question, and if we get to that point and we are borderline, then, you know, we can maybe look at the valuations and who made them and when they were made, and are they outdated and all that type of thing, so.
And again, it's also 30% of the square footage of the building as well, too.
Okay.
So again, if we're talking, let's say, heating and HVAC, we're not just talking the boiler room, we're talking every classroom, we're talking hallways, we're talking perimeter heating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
That's more of a black and white number there.
Yep.
Yeah. Chris?
I think as we've looked at this building for close to a decade now, knowing that it needs upgrades, there have been very similar buildings in other communities that have been torn down and replaced for a lot of money, right? If we are taking a building this old and we've taken good care of it and it can be updated and renovated, we might also want to consider that some of the things you'd be forced to do by hitting the 30% might really be worthwhile. You know, maybe we should look at this as a project that makes an old school into a new school. And I think to make it fully accessible and all the other building codes that would have to be met might be worthwhile. On the other hand, does it come close to costing as much as a new school?
I think that, again, depends on the size, but Arlington High School is a little bit bigger than this, but not much, was, again, $300 million. So that's not an outrageous number these days. One of the challenges with the MSBA on this particular project that you all know well is that this is more than a repair, because they have a repair category, and it's, I guess you could almost consider it a renovation in a sense, because once it's triggered, then there's a significant amount of work. So it's almost an in-between type thing that I think hurts our application sometimes. And we don't have enrollment pressure because we have a preschool, we have BCAT, we have lab, we have the central office, we have all this square footage that used to be full of kids. So that's the dilemma that we're in with the state funding. So it's more than a renovation and more than a repair. It's sort of, well, it's kind of a combination of both.
Would we have any way to be considered for SBA money if we were to build a new building? All I'm saying is if we have to pay for this whole thing, a new building, you can generally get SBA to pay for half of it. So if we look at all the costs involved in this, is our share, which will be 100% under the fix-it-up method, is that more than half, so that it would cost the town less money to build a new school if SBA refunded us half of it?
if I can comment. I don't have it yet, but as part of the feasibility study, there is a cost estimation. There's a whole company that is being subcontracted to complete that. So I think we'll have those answers to say, industry standard around, let's say New England, what it has cost in the past few years to rebuild an elevator, to, put in an HVAC system. We should have those cost estimates in this feasibility study. One other comment that I'm not positive on, but I think that we would need to submit applications to MSBA and have them accept us. And we've done that for 10 years and have not been accepted. So I don't believe the 50% reimbursement is eligible to us to build them.
Unless we build a new school.
No?
I don't think it's eligible at all unless
Oh,
we're
okay.
accepted into their,
Right, we got to go through the
either their
application
core
process.
or accelerated repair program.
Okay, thank you.
And then the other thing is, with the Memorial School and Fox Hill School, we're able to use the existing building while we construct the new one. I'm not sure we have another place to put a high school here, so
I know.
that's another logistical issue.
Landlocked parcel, build a bridge.
So I also wanted to comment
Joe.
that I did support sort of what Mrs. Monaco was saying about if we want to do it, is it worthwhile? That these are issues that this building is out of compliance, and it's not just that we're out of compliance, it's that it's not accessible.
Yeah.
It's not just that we're out of compliance, it's that we've been grandfathered in. We don't have sprinkler system in this building. From years ago, when we were still trying to get MSBA to approve it, we were saying that the air quality was not really very good in this building, and it affected kids' learning, and it affected teachers. And so I do think we want to do it right if we're going to do it. And although it's tempting to say, well, would it be less expensive for the town if we built a new building? From the numbers I've seen, it doesn't look like it's, and I would look forward to hearing. But again, I don't think we would get MSBA approval for it either. So I am looking forward to more information from the feasibility study and from that group that you said is going to do some cost estimates for us. I mean, it's disappointing that, I know we put I don't even know where the 3 elevators are, because I thought we had just the 2 going down to the gym, and I don't even know, where's the other one? Yeah, okay, so, and it's disappointing if the difference is 4 inches and we need a new one, but the fact is that it needs to be accessible for all of our students, for all of our staff, for public who come in. I want this room to be accessible to everybody who might want to attend. In the long term, we are going to have people back here, so.
Sure, Bob.
Please, through the chair. Not being argumentative, but if I could just state that the air quality in this building has been tested numerous times and continually worked on and is good. So I please don't want it to be known or said that the air quality is not.
Okay. Got it.
Second would be is that also part of this plan, we only have the draft of the feasibility. My job now is to go through, look for any mistakes, corrections, feedback. They also need to continue working on it. Once we have the formalized plan, they want to meet with me to review, and they also want to schedule a time to come in here if you all want that, to answer questions and discuss. So I think it's a great idea that we're doing this plan. I think the data we're going to get from this plan is going to be very useful for not only this committee, but for the school committee, for the school in general and the town. I think we'll be able to answer a lot of those questions moving forward of what we think the total project would cost us, what a new building may cost us, the logistics of whether we repair or not. And all of it, of course, is funding and time dependent. So it's been a long time coming, but the draft is here. Hopefully soon, we'll have a finished report and we'll have more of these great conversations.
Martha.
I also just wanted to say I appreciate that we're getting this information, because it has been a long time coming. And I also want to thank, the reason we had the money to do these feasibility reports is because we got money from our capital budget requests from town meeting. So I want to thank town meeting again for this, because this is crucial to moving on this project.
Okay, anything further on that, or Bob, anything else as far as the update? Okay. Next item on our agenda is the Fox Hill School Building Committee. as I think we recall at the last meeting, there had been a request made for a capital budget person to be appointed to the Fox Hill Building Committee, and I asked that the matter be put on to tonight's agenda because I just wanted to do a little homework. And mainly, I wanted to see if in years past with previous building projects, we've had capital budget committee designees. And we haven't, for the last 3 anyway. Memorial School and the middle school, both done 10 years or so ago, and there wasn't any capital budget member designated for there. And then the one prior to that was the Francis Wyman back in the mid-90s when we took that building back and refurbished that. And there wasn't any capital budget member on that committee. I didn't go, the next one before that was the high school, which was in '72, and I was 14, so I don't know. So, in any event, to me, that was a factor, because I think with the school building authority, they designate and mandate certain people to be members of a building committee. And we have appointed all of the mandated people. We then had a discussion as a committee as to who else we wanted to put on the committee, and we agreed on some community members and some PTO people, and anybody who was interested applied for those, and we made appointments for those people. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but I think we have 19 people on the committee currently. The Capital Budget Committee is not one of the designated or mandated people that have to be appointed to the SBA, or by the SBA to the Building Committee. So the question becomes, do we expand it for a Capital Budget Committee member? And my feeling on this is, I don't think so, frankly. I think 19 is going to be a cumbersome committee. My concern is if we start making exceptions for one group, you know, who's to say somebody else might not come back next week and ask for a member, and you know, where do we draw the line? I think we had a discussion as a committee as to what type of a building committee we wanted, how many people we wanted on it, what that membership was going to be made of, and that was something we discussed publicly and ultimately voted on and made the appointments. I've heard the argument that having a capital budget committee member would be a valuable asset to the committee, and I'm sure it would be, frankly, but you know, in the last few years, we've had 2 relatively large building projects made it through town meeting, they both came in on budget and on time without a capital budget committee member. So, well, I think potentially it might be helpful, and if that suggestion had come up back when we were talking about the makeup of the committee, maybe I would have supported it at that point, but I feel that while it might be nice, it's not crucial. These are public meetings. Anybody who wants to show up certainly can show up. So anybody who wants to give input or feedback during the process will have the opportunity to do that. But given the logistics, the makeup of the current committee, the fact that we've already discussed this, and I'm reluctant to make exceptions to what we previously voted, I would not be in favor of expanding the committee, but it's an agenda item, and if somebody wants to make a motion to do so, then certainly we can have that discussion. Martha?
I'd like to make a motion to add a member of the Capital Budget Committee to the School Building Committee, and we can have a further discussion about it.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded.
I definitely, I mean, I agree with you about how a big committee can be cumbersome, but I don't feel that because we didn't think of it 2 months ago that we wouldn't want to do it now. I think it's a valuable, the Capital Budget Committee has a lot to do with the funding sources for the schools. They know a lot about the town finances. We, you know, this project is going to be involved with, I know I've looked at some of the capital budget projections for the next 10 years, and I just think it would be valuable to have somebody with that background, as well as to have someone else from the town meeting side to, maybe we could discuss that we have a capital budget member who is a town meeting member, or something along those lines. But I am in support of it.
Okay. Cal?
Thank you. I also am in favor of adding the capital budget. I don't think that there's much downside. I mean, 19 moving to 20, I don't see a huge leap there. I was only on town meeting for a year, but I was able to notice that there are factions is too strong of a word, but certain groups within town meeting, and I think that as the project moves forward, if we have the representation from capital budget, that they can garner certain support, as well as the Ways and Means can garner certain support. I think that it's only going to be to the benefit of the school building committee to add a representative from capital budget.
Christine?
I don't think that it makes any sense to add one person, because then you have 20 and you can have tie votes. And having been part of a committee, a building committee, I've seen some very difficult votes. I would emphasize that anyone, the entire capital budget committee, anyone is welcome to attend and give input at the building committee meetings. It can be any board in town. Board of Health might have an interest as well. So I'm happy to leave it as it is and just invite anyone who wants to come to give their input and be part of the process.
And I was going to say, I also agree with Tom. I think we had had a discussion on who we wanted to have participate. We voted on it. And, I think Christine made a good point about being, even number versus odd number. And I also think that, anyone who wants to participate is welcome to participate at any point and give us our input. And adding that extra person, I don't think is going to, really be necessary at this point.
Anything further? Seeing none, put the motion to vote. All in favor of expanding the building committee by adding a capital budget committee member, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Aye. The motion fails 2-3. Next item on our agenda, school lunch update. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Ms. Monaco, just so I can maybe target my response, why don't you ask the question, if that's okay, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So I can make sure I'm answering.
Okay, having heard from numerous staff members about the difficulty they're having providing lunch for so many children, because as a way of explanation, when the cafeterias are open and the kids come down and they have choices, that they take what they want. The way it is now, the cafeteria workers prepare all the food, and they have to put everything in every lunch, so a lot of food gets thrown out. So they have to work very hard to prepare much more food than they had to when the cafeterias were open. The food services director is having a terrible time getting all of the paper goods and those kinds of products that are used to prepare every lunch individually and send it up to a classroom. The workers are having to run all over the building. After they do all this work preparing the lunches, they have to run all over the building delivering the lunches. And I think it's an untenable situation. So I think it's obvious to everyone that I am very concerned about COVID, and I don't want any, I don't want to take risks at all. But if there is a way that we can work to get these cafeterias open, I think it would be very worthwhile for the social, emotional well-being of the kids, to eliminate some of this extra work on the cafeteria staff. And I kind of think that it's just time. The kids are in school together. You know, maybe there need to be rules, like maybe classes eat together because they're together in their classrooms. But I think we should definitely be working to getting these cafeterias open.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think from our weekly community commentary, and I think from some of the conversations we've had, we are working to have our elementary cafeterias back open. I think the middle school and high school are utilizing some different spaces, but looking to use the cafeterias more. We have some logistical things to get through. Bob, I know you have to move some furniture out. The cafeterias are being used as instructional spaces, so we sort of have to get the cafeterias ready to be cafeterias again, and that's going to take us a couple, some time. So Mrs. Monaco, to your point, is we're looking at the early part of November, so I won't give you an exact date, but maybe first week of November. We're looking at utilizing the cafeterias again. Please understand it's not a light switch. We'll probably have a couple days where teachers will take, especially the younger kids who've never eaten the cafeteria, down. They have to learn the routine. They'll have to be introduced to our cafeteria workers. They'll have to stand in line. We'll have to go sort of reintroduce that process. What's being suggested from some of our neighboring districts who are in the process of opening their cafeterias is to require masks. Obviously, throughout the entire experience, waiting in line to pick up the food, to only allow the mask to come off when children are seated at the table and eating. They're saying in most cases the kids are finished with their food in roughly 15 minutes, which is sort of the definition of a close contact anyway. Mask goes back on, table is cleared, and we can move forward. And again, they haven't seen any increase in the number of cases or spread. Windows are open in their cafeterias when possible. So it's so again, I think we're looking at ways to maximize airflow, but again, they haven't experienced an uptick in cases. I think we will see an uptick in close contacts if there is a positive, because contact tracing in a cafeteria will be much more difficult, even if they're sitting by class. Mrs. Monaco, they just won't have the spacing, so we'll identify more kids, which will put more pressure on the test and stay program that's there. So I think we're looking at a bunch of parallel things at once, but looking at opening our cafeterias and then monitoring that closely will be, again, the plan is just a couple weeks in a couple weeks away. So I think that's the plan.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on that
Well,
particular?
I'm glad to hear that as well, because like I said, I've been hearing a lot from people working in the cafeterias and how stressful it's been, so I'm glad to hear that.
It has, and I think I've spoken to some myself, and they haven't, the comments haven't gone unnoticed, or I want you to know that we have attended to them and have taken them seriously. It just wasn't something we could do very quickly, given the sort of state of where we're at, but I think we'll be on track to, again, have the cafeterias open. As I said, we're wrapping up sort of the first quarter of the school year. I think you're going to see more of a traditional school day, more features of a traditional school day moving into the second quarter, again, as we monitor everything closely, as we see more of our students eligible to be vaccinated. There's a bunch of things happening at once. We're never going to have it completely be risk-free of everything, but we're trying to manage as best we can moving forward. So that's the idea.
Okay, thank you. Seeing nothing further, we'll move on to the next item, which is Safe Routes to School update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to turn that over to Bob, and I want to thank him for putting in the time, and I know you've been having some conversations with the Safe Routes to School folks. So Bob, why don't you review some of what you presented, what we discussed, I think, a couple days ago.
Let me recap for a little bit. We became a Safe Routes to School member back in June. One of the requirements of Safe Routes to School is that you need to be an active member for 6 months. A little bit of confusion on my part. I thought it means we had to be a member for 6 months before we could take advantage of it. That's not the case. But some of the next steps that we could take that would make us active members, I did discuss with Judy Crocker. We had a meeting, a virtual meeting last week. So a couple of examples that she recommends, 3 of them in particular, would be parent surveys. Those could be handled one of 2 ways. One would be that it's an online survey that Safe Routes to School initiates. They open up a 2-week window, create a link to that. We promote it, we put it, either on our website or barcodes around so people take advantage of that. After that 2-week window, that data is collected and Safe Routes will analyze that and share that with us. Again, no personal information is shared, more just useful information for the Safe Routes to School process. The second item that is recommended is for us to participate in professional development, pedestrian bicycle safety. That would be a 2-hour minimum requirement for us to have. The recommendation would be potentially the gym teachers, which is where Safe Routes to School has seen that. I'm sorry, the PE teachers throughout the state. It's also, second would be a recommendation for the nurses to take that. Now, anyone can take that. That's just some of the recommendations and where it's been predominantly held and taught in other districts. But the second part to that would be adopting that curriculum into the Burlington Public Schools curriculum. So Safe Routes to School is K through 8. It's not a high school level, and we don't get high school funding for that, so the high school isn't eligible for it. So that means we would need to focus on, obviously, our elementary and/or our middle school for that professional development. But again, it's a 2-hour minimum that we would have to participate in, so we would need to look at potentially scheduling that if that is something that we were interested in. And then, like I said, potentially adopting and/or reviewing to adopt the curriculum into ours. There have been some registered sessions, one on October 15th, which was the Safe Routes to School infrastructure launch, which I did attend. So there's a checkbox there. And there's another one on October 29th, which is the Safe Routes to School Annual Fall Summit, which I am registered for, so I will be attending that. And then there is a few other things. So we can request an arrival dismissal observation where Safe Routes to School would come and view our arrival and dismissal actions, and then either assess those and/or give us a report on those. And then school committee, again, sorry, one more recommendation would be that the school committee could adopt a wellness policy amendment specific to active transportation. Now, Judy Crocker has provided me with some information that I'll share with the committee for you all to review. Tonight was really just to recap as to where we're at in the process, and then some possible next steps for us to take. Now, again, we couldn't request any funding until at least 3 of these were taken, and we are active members. So like I said, there is some time in between, but by attending some of the infrastructure meetings and whatnot, we're in that active process now, but we still would need to do more if we ever wanted to look for requesting funding.
So again, Mr. Chair, we did speak with Matt Jackling, who is our health and PE coordinator, so he feels like he can work with a curriculum. He said some of it's aligned with some of the lessons that we already teach, so he feels like that wasn't that heavy a lift. I think he could coordinate getting the physical education teachers trained, health teachers trained on those 2 aspects of the 3. The survey, we've discussed about doing a survey. I think using the Safe Routes to School to do the survey would be a positive thing. I think we would just need to discuss timing moving forward. So Bob, if then we became an active member at that point, then we could ask them to do more of the analysis piece of routes and pick up and drop off, but we have to implement at least 3 of those things first.
The analysis of the pickup drop-off is one of the items that would qualify us for active member, so we don't have to wait on that, so we could request that earlier. We just could not request funding for a project until 6 months has passed of us being an active member. So I know that sounds confusing. We can do small steps first. We can request time. We can request some of the reports that they already have. We can request the surveys that they already have, the curriculum that they already have, and the professional development we can schedule. We just can't request funding, actual monies from them for any projects until we're 6 months and or completed some of these tasks.
I have a
Okay,
clarifying
Napa, yeah.
question. So, after both of you spoke, I'm not sure, when they do an analysis of drop-offs and pickups, arrivals and dismissals, is that one of the things, the 3 things that we could do to become an active member? And so, okay, and so then after the 3 things, then what is it? That's when we're eligible for the funding. But is there something else that we're eligible for once, that they would do once we did those 3 things?
The overall concept is that we don't do just the 3 things and then ask for money. They want us to be more active in it. So they've given us at least 5 things that we could do and recommend that we at least try to look at 3 of them to get the ball rolling, so we become more active in their community.
Okay.
And once we do at least 3 of them, is that when the clock starts ticking on the 6-month thing?
The clock is ticking now because I've attended some of their registered sessions.
Okay. On the analysis, the pickup analysis, that could theoretically be one of the steps that we take, is that's done by them? Is there a cost to us of having them come in to do that?
There's no cost that I'm aware of. I just need to make the request, and then we just have to schedule time. Whether or not we choose a building, or they recommend a building that they want to do, or if they want to do it at multiple buildings. We just have to put that information in front of them and schedule it.
Okay. Chris?
I find this whole Safe Routes thing confusing. What is the ultimate goal of Safe Routes?
That we promote safety on sidewalks and promote students walking and riding their bikes to school in a safe environment. And if we promote that in a community level, when there is eligible funding, we may participate by requesting some of that funding. And if we're selected, then we could have our projects funded.
So is the goal to eliminate kids coming to school in buses?
No, I think it's to provide other options and encourage kids to be outside walking and riding their bikes in a safe way.
Okay.
I think the funding is a secondary part of it because they don't have unlimited pockets. Funding is only available certain times a year and at different dollar values. So depending on when you request the funding, if you were to, sometimes they have large projects that fall into infrastructure, and sometimes they have smaller projects that have caps on what you can actually request. But again, I think from their point of view, the funding is secondary. It's really to promote walking and bicycle safety for students to and from school.
Okay, so the dilemma that I have on this is I'm totally in favor of kids, getting exercise, riding their bikes, all of the above. So I can easily support that. I cannot support forcing that to the extent that we don't provide school buses, and that's what I'm conflicted about. So as long as that, if it's like you have the option, if your parents are comfortable with it, of walking to school or riding your bike to school, etc., that's fine. But it would not impose on us any requirement to not bus students, correct?
There is no requirement for us to
Okay.
minimize or remove busing from Burlington Public Schools.
Okay, thank you. Then, do you know what is in the survey or the curriculum?
The survey, yes. The curriculum, no.
Can you just give me an example of what they're trying to find out from parents with a parent survey? can do it tomorrow if it's hard to find.
We'll put it right now. Sorry, I just had to upload this. So for example, the first question would be, how does your child get to school on most days? There are multiple choices, so it'd be family vehicle, carpool, bike, transit, school bus, walk, or other. How does your child get home from school? How many vehicles do you currently have in your household? How many people in your household have a driver's license? So again, general questions in that sense on, who could benefit from walking to school, who could benefit from riding their bike to school,
Okay. I get it.
and it's all anonymous.
And the curriculum stuff, we don't really know what it is, just that we're going to, if we go this route, we're going to be teaching this curriculum.
Correct. I don't have access to that right now. It's something that we would have to schedule professional development on, and then I don't know if there's a way that we could get access to that curriculum prior to or early.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding this? This was just an update, so there's no action item before us this evening.
No action item, but again, I know the committee was interested. We are pursuing becoming active members, so I think that was part of the update. I think we're involving, from the curriculum side of the house, the folks who do the instruction. I think I learned that K-8 was really their focus, so that was something I also wanted the committee to realize. We'll be looking to do utilize Safe Routes for a Parent survey at some point, and we're trying to think about the timing of that. And Bob, the other sort of contextual timing here in the back of my head is we're in year 3 of our 5-year bus contract. So next year is year 4. So again, it's not immediate, but time goes so quickly. It's not that far away when we'll be talking about committee's expectations and putting together a bid specs and talking about transporting kids to school again. So I think that's it's all sort of right around the corner. So I think that's so that was the context of the Safe Routes to School.
All righty. Do we have need for executive session this evening?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring forward? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.